Welcome everyone to Megyn Kelly Today on this somber morning. Yesterday, as you know, we woke up to a horrific story. At least 59 people were murdered, more than 500 were wounded in yet another mass shooting incident. This one was in Las Vegas. I felt so sad on hearing the news and helpless, right? I personally felt thankful that my kids are too young to watch the news. These folks went to an outdoor venue to listen to a concert, and there was music, and there was dancing, and then there were bullets raining down from the 32nd floor of a hotel room above, indiscriminately and mercilessly. Scores of people were shot under rapid fire, and it sounded like warfare, and it looked like war. It looked like it. A 64-year-old man who fit into no known risk category, no apparent history of violence, no police record, no mental health problems, no zealotry that we know of, who opened fire on innocent people who had no chance of fighting back. That's how it always is. They had no chance. From Columbine to Newtown to the Pulse nightclub, and now in Las Vegas, the shooters target those who have little to no chance of defending themselves. I have been watching as the victims' names come in, and they are people just like you and me. Sandra Casey, a special ed teacher. Nisha Tonks, a mother of 3 children. Sonny Melton, a 29-year-old nurse who saved his wife's life before losing his own. The good people of Nevada sprang into action, reminding us of who we really are in this country, who we are. The police who confronted the danger head-on, the medical staff at the hospitals who kept the OR doors open day and night, the regular folks who donated water and supplies and waited in line for hours to donate blood. And now we inevitably struggle in vain to make sense of it all, trying to rationalize an irrational act. I think we feel like finding the motive will help us understand better and will help us feel like the next one may be preventable if we could only understand this one. But the truth is, we never really change anything after these situations, do we? And the mass murders keep coming. They keep coming, and they come, and they come over and over again. So many now that we stop and we say, oh God, when we see it, and then we move on. Perhaps a little too quickly. So I do feel helpless in these times. Do you? The mental health laws are not going to change, and we know it. The gun laws? Right. And even if they did change, you would still get people like this guy, and we know it. From the look of things, this is a guy who was a lone shooter, no history of violence, no record, no red flags, no anything. No anything in this case, not yet anyway. A retired accountant who had a girlfriend who was supposedly happy, who one day decided to murder a group of innocent people here in the land of the free. So how exactly do we make sense of that? Tom Brokaw is going to be here in a moment, and I'm going to ask him those questions, and we have a panel of experts here today, and I want to get your thoughts on it too, on how you're feeling and how we're supposed to process this. But I want to check in with Savannah. Savannah Guthrie's live on the ground in Las Vegas for us this morning. Savannah, what's the latest there? Good to see you.
Hi, Megyn. Good morning to you. Well, the sun's coming up here, and it's somehow is warming the feeling here. This community is trying to knit itself back together after something so unthinkable. It happened right behind me. You can see the Mandalay Bay Hotel, and then just under it, you can see where the concert stage is still there. And this street where I'm standing 24 hours ago was full of people who had been running for their lives. I was so struck. I read a quote in the newspaper from one of the country singers who played here, who said, you know, there I am, I'm running for my life, but nobody knew where the shots were coming from. And so it was a matter of trying to make the right decision. Which way to go? Do I go left or right? And I don't know which way is the right choice. And I think just imagining that trauma and imagining what people have gone through, it's really more than our hearts can bear. And as you said, the good people of Las Vegas and Nevada have really shown themselves to be so generous and so caring and so loving. There were lines here blocks and blocks and blocks, hours long to give blood. Already there's been a GoFundMe page set up. More than $2 million has been raised to help victims, the people with the different expenses that they're encountering now. So this is a place that is healing, but that healing's going to take a really long time, Megyn.
Yep. And this morning on your show, there was a reunion, Savannah, of two men. Tell us about it.
Yes, I mean, talk about trying to see something good in the midst of so much dark. These two gentlemen will do that. They never knew each other before Sunday night, and Tom, who is the one on the right in the glasses, was shot as he had just helped his wife over a fence here, actually, and then he himself was shot. And he says he was bleeding out. He knows in his heart, he thinks he would not have made it. And then the gentleman you see on the left, James, just stopped, tied up the tourniquet. He actually has military experience, spent many years in our military, and a truck came along and they kind of jumped in the back and went to the hospital, and they had not seen each other since, and they met right there, and it was really a moment and for both of them. And I think both of them wanted to be there and have that moment and share it with each other and share it with everybody for the reason that I mentioned. We want to show the world this is who we really are. This is what we're really about. This is really what good looks like. And there was a lot of good in the midst of all this heartache and sadness.
It was a moment for them, and it was a moment for us too. Thank you so much, Savannah Guthrie. Joining me now is NBC News special correspondent Tom Brokaw. Tom, good to see you this morning. So nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens. You know, we don't change the mental health system. We don't change any laws. We sigh and we express our sadness, and then we move on. And there's a question about whether anything can be done to stop evil in a free society.
You know, the whole debate about guns has been going on in America for a long, long time now. I grew up with guns. I still have them. I live in Montana part of my life. And it's been an important part of my life from a sporting point of view. And most of the people out there I know have weapons as well. But what's happened in the last 15 years or so is that we militarized the weapons that are available to people, including, obviously, the gun that was used in the shooting. If you go on any of the gun store websites now, whether it's Cabela's or Shields, a big sporting goods store in the Midwest and the West, they have a whole array of military weapons that have been customized for domestic use. That means they can't be on full auto. But gun collectors are also gunsmiths. They know how to change that back to full auto. Obviously, the gun that was used the other day, if you listen, brrr, it was like that. It wasn't one shot after another shot of some kind. And that's all changed during the time that we've been having a debate about how we get control of guns in society. It's gotten worse, not better. And if this isn't a wake-up call, I don't know what is.
Well, that's what people said after Newtown, you know, and it wasn't. But the other side will say, look what happened in Boston. You know, we've got Jeff Bowman here today who lost both of his legs in the Boston Marathon bombing. And look what happened in Nice, where a truck was used to mow down and kill 86 people. I don't know. You've seen so many things. You've been in actual war zones. Do you feel like things are getting worse in this country? There's been a coarsening, or is it just that we draw more attention to it now?
Well, I don't know what comes first in this case, whether the automatic weapons that were legalized in effect then caused more people to shoot more people because they had more capacity, or were they the kind of first offense? You know, the NRA likes to say the best way to stop a man with a gun is another man with a gun. Well, that's kind of a cover, it seems to me. If this were happening, for example, in the last 24 hours in a place like Somalia or Yemen, or in one of the Middle Eastern states, we'd all be saying, my God, how uncivilized, how can they be to shoot 59 people and a gun and a toll will go up. It happened in what is supposed to be the apogee of civilization. This country, a country that was built on the rule of law. We have people come from all over the world here and seeking not only freedom, but the aspirations that we've all enjoyed. And this is a terrible blight on our time. I never expected in my career as a correspondent that at this stage in our lives, this is what we would be talking about.
That veneer of civility can be very thin, right? It can be very thin when you have a man determined in a free society to unleash hell. Stand by, because we have much more with Tom right after the break, and we're going to continue our conversation and going to be joined by others who can help, we hope, put this in perspective. And we're back now with NBC's Tom Brokaw. Also joining us to continue the conversation is NYU Clinical Assistant Professor of Psychiatry, Dr. Sue Varma, survivor of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing, Jeff Bowman, and security analyst and former Secret Service agent, Edie Pampouras. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it. So let's just start with this. One of the questions that we have, Edie, is how we protect ourselves in this situation. Is there anything as a practical matter that we could actually do? God forbid we found ourselves in an active shooter situation.
Yes, absolutely. And what we're going to share with you today is something to empower you. When you go anywhere you arrive, you should take the first minute to assess your surroundings. So I want you to do 3 things when you arrive somewhere. First is you want to think about, I'm going to evacuate, right? When you hear shots being fired or an incident happening, you want to move away. So evacuation is the first thing. You should always identify 2 ways in, 2 ways out of any place you go. And also keep in mind that if you don't do that, what the mass majority of people do is when something happens, everybody goes in the same door, everybody tries to go out the same door they came in. So we want to think evacuate. The second thing we want to think is cover. Look for cover. And again, you assess that, you look around, what's around me? Is there a table around? Is there something strong that could possibly stop a bullet or shield me? So identify cover. Concealment is also, that's the third thing, concealment. Concealment is not something that can stop a bullet, but it can hide you. So a curtain, a poster, because you want to think of it this way, right. What the shooter cannot see, he cannot engage. So you're literally hiding. And if you find yourself indoors somewhere, you also want to try to find a room where you can, we call it hardening up, a room where you can barricade yourself, lock the doors, and stay there until you can evacuate or help comes.
Thank you. Dr. Varma, let me ask you, because the reports about this guy don't have any of the red flags that we normally see. And in fact, the only thing that we've learned that's potentially of interest in his history is his father was once on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. He was a bank robber who escaped, ran over a federal agent, and that was apparently diagnosed in his record as a psychopath. So what, if anything, can we glean from that?
Absolutely. You know, nature versus nurture is, in this case, the billion-dollar question, I would say. And it's hard to ignore. I mean, we find that in twin studies, genetically, there's about a 45 to 50% correlation between genetics and psychopathy. But in this case, it's also very difficult to tease apart where does nurturing, where does a role model play in. And it's hard to ignore the fact that you have somebody who has created one of the biggest mass shootings in history, U.S. history, and then you have his father on the top 10 FBI list, so it's very hard to ignore. But definitely ideas of impulse control, what are considered social norms, that's something that we get from our parents. And if you don't have that from a very young age, that plus the biological loading definitely sets somebody up for a situation like this.
It's just so, I mean, 64 years of no trouble with law enforcement. They said he never even had a fight. So it's, you know, we're all looking for a way to predict who would be the next. And, you know, the question is whether that is a completely vain exercise, given circumstances like these. We're going to bring our audience in on this after the break, and I would love to ask Jeff Bowman when we come back what the victims of this tragedy can expect, those who have survived in their first year of healing. Don't go away. And we're back now with our panel. I want to get the audience involved in this. And I understand we have Peggy out in the audience who's got a question. Oh, no, let's start with Linda. Linda, sorry, who's got a question for Jeff that I also would like to know the answer to. Linda, go ahead.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
I have been very, very inspired by the story of your recovery, having been through a horrific accident and long recovery myself. I was hoping you could give some advice to those at home watching today who are going through some kind of difficult, discouraging, sad recovery.
Yeah, you know, recovery is a long process. Physically, I think I attacked my physical before my mental, which was, I think, a poor mistake on my part. And but definitely, you have to take care of both your physical recovery and your mental recovery. And you know, that would be my first advice. And also, to trust the people around you and use your your support group around you, and that's huge because usually when people tend to go through something traumatic, you tend to isolate a lot, and I did in my recovery. I isolated a lot and pushed people away from me that were trying to help, and so I would just recommend that you don't isolate and that you work on both your physical and mental recovery.
Yep. Thank you for that. Peggy's here, has a question for Dr. Varma.
Yes, Sue, in this environment, we're all so fearful. This last shooting has just affected me so much. And I'm just wondering, how do we address this with our children, our grandchildren?
Yes, Peggy, you know, fear is definitely an expected predominant emotion in a situation like this, but it's also important to realize that hope and a community and a sense of resiliency is something that we all have innately, the ability to bounce back. It is very difficult discussing this with children, having age-appropriate conversations. If you're talking about elementary school children, keeping it simple, but also understanding their curiosity. This is when they're full of life and courage and empathy and sympathy and curiosity and want to understand the world and why do bad things happen to good people. And that's a very difficult and troubling question for all of us to have to answer. Sure, but it's also important to remember that it's also our job to shield our kids to some level. As somebody who worked with 9/11 survivors, I saw that the more repeated, long exposure that we had to disturbing images was also very difficult for people in terms of recovery. So understanding a delicate balance between discussion and also protecting our kids.
Want to get in Bill from Alamo, California. Bill?
Morning. You know, with the tragedy that happened in Las Vegas, we're constantly bombarded with the news day and night. When does this become harmful to us and our children?
This is for you, Tom. When does it become too much?
I couldn't hear the question.
We get bombarded with the images in the aftermath. And when does it become harmful, this wall-to-wall coverage?
Well, I would say to this audience and any audience before which I appear these days, we are where we are because of the power of people who wanted these kinds of guns. And the NRA managed to organize them and get them as a political force in America. So the question is, if you're not happy with what has happened, your individual obligation as a citizen is to organize on the other side. And that's possible as well. The NRA has a lot of money, obviously. And if you're running against the NRA and a lot of the Western congressional districts, for example, you're portrayed as a traitor to America. You know, you're not in favor of having people who have weapons, and that's, after all, how the country started. We're a long way away from that Second Amendment, in which we said that a well-regulated militia is important to our country.
Thank you to our entire
panel. I think that we have to step up.
We're up against a hard break. Apologies, Tom broke out. Sorry, they're wrapping me hard because we got a hard break coming up. But listen, this debate will not end now. There are people who defend the Second Amendment who believe you can't legislate against evil, and those who believe we have to have an honest conversation. Got to leave it at that. We'll be right back after this. Settle for More is not only the name of my book, but it is also a series of stories that we're going to be doing here on a regular basis. The concept is really just a simple idea. It is a gut check to make sure you're doing all you can to live the life you really want, which is exactly what one singer did when a devastating diagnosis threatened her musical dreams, and doctors told her one more note might end her life.
Good things come in little packages just like me.
When she was just 5 years old, Charity Tilleman Dick had already found her voice and her dream to become an opera singer. While most 80s kids preferred Prince or Madonna, it was this opera, Hansel and Gretel, that struck a chord with Charity and set her on her own path. From the small stages of local pageants to the glittering concert halls of Europe, Charity worked tirelessly to be pitch perfect. Just as she started hitting the high notes on stage and in life, she began fainting, stumbling, and most troubling for any singer, she was gasping for breath. Her diagnosis? Idiopathic pulmonary hypertension, a rare and most times deadly condition that prevents one's lungs from functioning properly. Charity's doctor told her she had to stop singing, that her high notes could prove deadly. After a second opinion, Charity chose a double lung transplant instead. The risky 13-hour surgery ended with Charity on life support and in a coma. But after 5 weeks, Charity awoke for her second act. But could she sing again? Ladies and gentlemen, here for her encore, please welcome Charity Tilleman-Dick.
Bravo!
Beautifully done.
Beautiful.
Please sit. Don't you feel like we needed that? I feel like we needed that.
Oh.
Thank you for that. God, that was so beautiful.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
What's incredible is not only did you have a double lung transplant, but then you had another transplant. Your body rejected those lungs. So you are on your third set of lungs right now.
I am. I wouldn't recommend them for recreational purposes, but, but given the situation, I am so profoundly grateful that I was able to receive those transplants.
How is it possible? When we listen to you, it seems like nothing has ever happened.
You know, the human spirit is an amazing thing. We have an incredible ability to adapt and to learn and to grow. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors on one side, and on the other side, my grandmother was widowed with 3 children when my father was only 5 years old. I had a little brother who died when I was 5. And one thing that my mother always taught me is that we have the ability to live up to what the world demands of us and what our circumstances require. And it's been true many times over in my life.
I think many people would have wanted to give up, would have climbed underneath the bed and said, I can't. Not only have you gone through these lung transplants, you've continued singing, you found love. And is it true that you achieved your dream of singing at Lincoln Center in a wedding gown?
Yes.
Is that true?
I'd been in the hospital for 10 days before, and I didn't think I was going to leave until I found a match for a transplant or until I died, but my doctors at the Cleveland Clinic worked miracles, and they got me out in time to go, but I didn't have anything fit but my wedding gown. So it worked. It was a great dress.
Oh, I'm sure, spectacular.
A great dress.
You've also decided to help others. Tell us how.
So I am launching a campaign with Donate Life America called the My Encore campaign. As I was writing my book, all of these people came to me with these incredible stories of second chances. And we all want redemption. We all want a second chance. And as I faced my own challenges, I found that doing something was incredibly important. And so what it is you go to donatelife.net/myencore. You register as an organ donor on the new online donor registry. You tell a story of your own second chance, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a lung transplant. And then you challenge 5 friends to join you. And
this is how we pay it forward.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.
You sound beautiful.
Thank you so
Thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I know. can read more about Charity's story in her new memoir called The Encore, which is out today. Up next, comedian Russell Brand on fame, addiction, recovery, and his newest gig, fatherhood. Well, from TV to movies to sold-out stand-up tours, Russell Brand is one of the most famous comedians in the world. And he is also one of the most candid. Russell Brand is everywhere. Some know him as an actor from hit films like Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh, right, hey, I'm All the Snow.
I know who you are, yeah, you're very, very famous.
Yeah, I am, for my sins.
Others as a stand-up comic. Some may even remember his short marriage to a pop icon. And kids may recognize him from their favorite animated films.
And here, of course, is the new weapon you ordered.
Like Dr. Nefario in Despicable Me, or Creek in Trolls.
Everyone, we must all remain calm.
Calm.
But there's more to Russell Brand than cinema and spectacle. In his memoirs and comedy special, Messiah Complex, he revealed his struggles with alcohol, food, sex, and drugs.
I was on a lot of drugs that day, a lot of drugs.
He's even testified before British Parliament, becoming a voice for those who battle addiction.
What I want to offer people is truth and authenticity in the treatment of this illness, in our regard to the criminal components of it, in assisting victims, and in the way we legislate and organise our society.
And in his new book, Recovery, Brand delivers a strong message about himself.
This book is written by me, not because I'm better than you, but because I'm worse than you, more vain, more superficial, more connected to material objects.
More determined than ever to help others make a change. And Russell is out with a new book about those battles called Recovery, Freedom from Our Addictions. Everyone, please welcome Russell Brand. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Wow.
Thanks.
This book is raw, it is honest, it is self-effacing, and you talk openly about addictions to alcohol and drugs and sex and porn and your phone and food. And you use those to mask what?
Oh, well, personally what I think, Megyn, is there's a great deal of unaddressed pain, a lot of unconscious unhappiness that the world is dealing with, and it manifests on an individual level, perhaps as addiction and attachment to anything, like you've just brilliantly listed, and that was a lovely VT package. And I love you in the daytime. Well done coming into the glorious light. You seem beautiful here.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's like you've escaped. You're like an escaped stormtrooper who's took his helmet off to reveal great beauty. You belong here among the light. Well, so I suppose what it is that a lot of people are running on the energy of negativity, and like there'll be lots of ways of negativity manifesting. E.g., for example, a negative leader may emerge, like a carbuncle president. That's just a random example from an Englishman. But I think that addiction on a personal level can be like an attachment to technology, an attachment to sex, an obsession about what other people think of you. Now, I'm just learning about all this stuff, but the reason I've written this book, Megyn, is I believe it's possible for people to be happy. I believe it's possible for people to be connected. I think we're trying to solve inner problems externally continually. In fact, consumerism depends on that idea. So I just wanted to put spiritual ideas into the world in an easy-to-understand way.
How'd you get it started? Because that was a lot to conquer.
It is a lot to conquer, and I did it one day at a time and one issue at a time. When I started out, I was a terrible, terrible drug addict. I mean, even I watched that clip package you just put on. That was me sort of 13 or 14 years clean, dressed like that wrestler, The Undertaker. Did you see me there? That was in a parliamentary committee. It's extraordinary.
I kind of appreciated the boldness of it.
That's what I was going for, is boldness. Some people think, this guy's got a message and a mental health problem. But And in a way, both things are true. And I sort of feel like this is a time where sort of, like in this country alone, there's a horrific opioid problem, there's a terrific mental health problem, and I feel like we need new ways of talking about it. And for me, the acknowledgement of my own flaws and my own weaknesses and the recognition that none of the external solutions will work for me, whether it's fame, glamour, money, pornography, whatever, and that actually, oddly, peculiarly, spirituality will work for me is the thing I want to convey.
I love that you're trying to help others with it. It's not just about your story. You're trying to, and you're right. When are you going to recover the person you were born to be?
Well, that's a lovely idea, isn't it? That there was an intention. There's someone that we're supposed to realise. The same way we would understand that with a tree, that a tree has an intended journey. That if it isn't impeded by other people, or perhaps even other trees, it will grow in a certain direction. I suppose the idea that I want to get across is that we don't choose between having a programme and not having a programme. All of us are living by a programme, in most cases the unconscious programme of our childhood, the unconscious programme of our conditioning and our culture. And I think there is a way to liberate ourselves from that.
But and you write about how what we're trying to do is stay unconscious. We use these things, not always as an addict, but even if you're addicted to your phone, or even if you're abusing alcohol, or you're using it to not deal with things that continue to bubble up. And you, I know, used meditation as one of your steps. 12-step program meditation, which we're going to talk to Russell about because he's going to help us learn how to do it.
I will do that.
Right? And we'll do that right after this break. Stay with us. More with Russell Brand. And we're back now with Russell Brand. Russell, tell us about meditation and how you were able to get into that and use that to your advantage. Meditation.
Megyn, meditation is extremely important. If you neglect that aspect of your life, you're really giving up perhaps the most important thing there is in the world. This is what I learned, is that I am not my thoughts, I am not my feelings, I can witness them. This I learned through meditation. It's very easy to be caught up all the time in what I want. Look at this shirt, for example. I really wanted it for a while. Now,
love and lips.
I mean, it's very good. It's about love. I
see lips and a no smoking and hearts.
There's all sorts of powerful semiotics. Don't get bogged down. That's my point. Don't get caught up in the illusion of the literal material world, because our consciousness, I believe, behind our feelings and thoughts is comparable, similar. This is where we will find oneness. This is where we will find peace. I meditate every day, twice a day, and in that meditative space, I'm relieved of the constant thinking, the constant fear, the anxiety of being alive and not feeling like I'm good enough, and of course, the ongoing terror of death that lurks like a spectre just here.
Yes, it does. We were talking about that. Is that, I mean, I have fear of my own mortality. I lost my dad at a young age, and I think that hangs over me.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I know your mom had cancer when you were 7.
She's got cancer again right now. She's having chemotherapy at the moment. She had cancer 6 times, but the woman is very resilient. She likes it here on this planet, clearly.
But do you fear death? To me, you seem fearless. Are you fearless?
I'm really glad that you think I seem fearless, because it's an act I'm putting on. I have quite a lot of fear. I worry about what other people think of me. I worry about my place in the world. I worry about whether or not we can live loving one another. I worry about whether I'm good enough, whether I look good enough, whether my body is good enough. Sometimes I worry about my teeth.
You do. It is.
Yeah? Oh, what a relief. So, and I suppose the thing is that if I only identify with myself in the way I look and what other people think of me and what I earn, all these things are definitely going at death, if not before. So I have to have some other meaning to my life, and I wouldn't have that if it wasn't for this programme. And as I say, without the programme, this positive programme that makes me of service to other people, the other programme takes over and turns me into a selfish little narcissist. Very easily done.
There's a spectacular quote in the book, which I love, which reads, "My old way of life is with me still, like a worn-down coin in my pocket that I toy with from time to time. Like a madman, I sometimes countenance going back into the burning past to snatch at some scorched pleasure. How did I become this person on the other side of my misery, on the other side of my life?"
God, you should have done the audiobook. That was amazing. Is that incredible gravitas?
Is that about a fear of relapse? Do you wrestle with that?
What I think it is moment to moment we have the opportunity, moment to moment in relationship, to be loving and beautiful to one another, or be cruel to one another. And at a time where cruelty and danger and sort of mad, crazy behaviour is so prevalent in our culture, I suppose we have to recognise it in ourselves moment to moment, because that we do have control of. I can't control some of the crazy things that are going on our planet, but I can control whether or not I speak to people with dignity and love. That choice I do have. So I suppose it's about a very simple thing. I think by personal change, we can change the entire world. I know that sounds deep, but it's actually from Rocky IV.
Sylvester Stallone is very deep, truly. If you read that man's writings, he knows a thing or two. All right, wait, I want to bring the audience in on this. Lexi, up there, you've got a question. Hi.
Hi, Russell. My name's Alexi. I have a question. What tips do you have for someone who's in early recovery?
If you are in early recovery, thank you for that question, and firstly, well done. I think it's important to spend time with other people that have your condition, to be in support groups where people understand you. I think it's important as soon as you feel pain, not to live in the pain, but to connect with other people. I think we've become accustomed to being in misery. Somehow this idea that we're meant to be suffering has taken hold of life. I do not agree with it. If you find yourself in pain, speak to another person with more time than you. Speak to a person with less time than you. Sometimes over the course of a day I feel a bit miserable and I think, have you done anything for anyone else today? Often the answer is no. Like all I've done all day is thought about myself and done things for myself. So in early recovery you need help and you need love and you need to be around loving people. But as you get further down the path, which you will need to make yourself available to help others, and congratulations on your recovery.
Absolutely. Speaking of surrounding yourself with loving people, newly married and a new father, how's that treating you?
I love being a new father. I love my little daughter. In a month she'll be a year old, little Mabel. She's so beautiful and so glorious and so full of joy and love. But I'll tell you this now, Megyn, she's a vicious, vindictive, villainous little character. She thinks ow is a word. Her first word was ow because it's what she hears me say all the time, because she gets this chest hair here, twists it and pulls it like a UFC master, like Conor McGregor. And I go, ow, and she just goes, ow, ow.
Let the waxing begin.
That's right.
Well, congratulations to you.
Hey, congratulations to you. Now that I meet you as an actual human being, I feel appalled that anyone would ever be rude to you. You're glorious.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Russell Brand, everybody. We love him even more than we thought we did. His new book is Recovery, Freedom from Our Addictions. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. What a day and what an emotional moment from the top to the bottom. We're very grateful to have you with us. Kathy Lee and Hoda up next. Have a beautiful day.